I was born in Fresno, California in 1945. And I'm the son of a lifetime artist, a watercolor artist, who painted 20,000 watercolors in his life, 98 years. And my mother, whose family was from the South, and she worked in the aircraft factories, like women did in the Second World War. So I grew up there, man, in Fresno, California. I just taught myself to play saxophone. And the band director already was aware of me. I played violin when I was a kid, but I didn't want to play violin anymore because the tough guys would beat you up, So I ditched my violin. He said, look, why don't you take up another instrument? I hate to lose you. And then he let me take home instruments in a band room. And I learned to play trumpet, trombone, baritone, horn, bass, guitar. I learned all of those. He'd say, hey, here's a trombone. Why don't you take it home? Learn to play it this weekend. By the time he came back, I could play it. So that summer, I got a saxophone of my father's out of the attic and learned to play it. And so then I played saxophone. That was kind of a gas. I took up every instrument, piano. And so I can actually play every instrument but drums. I even play tuba. But I haven't done that in years. One time they picked me for All-America High School Star Jazz Band. And all the saxophone places were taken, but they wanted me to take sax solos. So I said, well, I play guitar. And so I played rhythm guitar until it was time for a saxophone solo. I put the guitar down, picked up the horn, did that. It was always easy for me to learn instruments, And here, past 24 years, probably I've made more of a living as a piano player than a horn player. But this year, since I've been back, 5 years since I've been back from Kansas City after Katrina, I just play saxophone after playing the piano. It's great. Oh, man. First things I liked was New Orleans rhythm and blues. I liked Fats Domino, Little Richard, Earl King. That's the first stuff I listened to. And it's funny, I went to hear Little Richard in person, and the saxophone player got up on the piano and laid on his back. I said, oh, man, I got to do that. And later I met him, man. He was one of my mentors was Roy Guitar Gaines, a blues musician from Los Angeles that's still going. And that was his brother Grady on saxophone. When I met Grady, he was driving a van out to the Houston airport and back. But I want to do it like Grady. I want to get up on the piano, lay on my back. And so that went for a while. I was first a tenor player, played tenor saxophone through Jackie Wilson. And then when I was with Jackie, we went out one day, and he bought me a record. It used to be those 10-inch records, because he knew I had a little record player, plastic thing I carried with me. He bought me a record, Charlie Parker, playing the tune Bebop. Man, I heard that, I went nuts. I said, I wanted to be able to do that. I want that. I said, Jackie, let me play alto. He says, no. If you bring an alto in here, I'll fire you. I hired you to play tenor. So he actually bought me my first Charlie Parker record. He said, you're going to like this, Lone Ranger. You're going to like this. Jackie was real musically aware of a lot of guys. Leroy Jackie Wilson. He was a good mentor, man. I was playing at a place owned by Wayne Cochran and the CC Riders on the 79th Street Causeway. And he had Jaco Pastorius in the band. He was saying, you kept hearing, oh, this great bass players when Wayne comes back and plays the club. It was Jaco. So I got to know Jaco, and I was sitting in with Jaco and Ira Sullivan, some of the jazz cats like that. But then I got the house band gig at the Continental Club down at the end of 62nd Street. And it was the biggest club in the ghetto. It was like everybody dressed real nice and had barbecue. And they were doing the Alligator, and it was a classy place. And all these name rhythm blues people came to the showroom upstairs. Jackie came. Tyrone Davis. You probably don't even remember these names. Barbara McCacklin, Tyrone Davis. And I was downstairs with my band, which was called Lone Ranger and Tonto, and at Soul Riders, and I wore a white cowboy hat, black mask. And my friend Pete, who was Mexican, who looked like Cochise, he wore a Tonto band. And Jackie Wilson came downstairs on his break, and he laughed, man. He cracked him up. He said, look, I'm going to hire you guys, but if I ever see that damn cowboy hat or that Indian headband, you're fired. So Pete and I went on the road with him. I was 18 years old when I worked with Jackie. We flew, we drove, we did buses, we did, and it was basically what they call a Chitlin circuit in the South. When we came to New Orleans, the first time we flew across the lake in a private plane, over there somewhere, and it was like a barn in the woods. And Jackie said, be careful, man, they practice voodoo over here. And then we worked at 333 St. Charles, which is a theater up in that building. It's a Masonic hall. And we worked there, and everybody was excited. Jackie was getting everybody excited, and the white couples and black couples started dancing on the floor together, right? So the cops saw that, he didn't like that, because the blacks were supposed to stay up in the balcony. So he tried to grab the microphone from Jackie to get him to stop. And that was the wrong guy to do that to, because Jackie was a boxer, man. He fought Sugar Ray Robinson when he was young. He lost. So how long did you last, Jackie? Two rounds. And boy, he gave that guy a right hook that was memorable. And the cop was big and fat. He went down. Of course, then they landed on top of us. So we all ended up down at Central Lockup. And they took Jackie in the back and beat him up. So he came back, his face was all messed up. He just put on makeup, went on to the next gig, never mentioned it, And they let us go. We were just stooges. But actually, at that time in the South, there was a law against black and whites working together, which Sarge had to let me know. We could arrest you, Driving to a gig in Montgomery, and we used to take the back. There weren't big interstates in those days like this. We took the back roads on purpose. And some guys in a pickup truck started following us and shooting at the bus. And it wasn't good because the engine is in the back in those buses, And they shot out the back window, and we all hit the floor. And they had shot out one tire. And so the bus driver pulled off the road like this, quite a ways off, and then he circled around. That was interesting, like this. He parked like this. And the reason he had done that was to give Vernon, the road manager, some cover, so he could go back along the bus without being seen by those guys with a 12-gauge shotgun, and he shot him. And we got back on the road. We were scared shitless, man. We thought we were all going to joint for murder. I didn't see it happen because I was on the floor of the bus. I was on the floor, please. I don't want to die. And that was strange. And we got to Montgomery, and backstage, Jackie said, I heard about what happened, man. He said, you okay, Lone Ranger? I said, yeah. We did what we had to do. Those guys were out to, kill us. One night in Mississippi, we made the mistake stopping at a diner, all went in. And of course, they all split immediately, the cooks, the waitresses. So the guys went back on the bus, and I stayed there. And I remember saying, I'm gonna get 35 cheeseburgers. Because we were traveling on the bus with the Chi-Lites in those days, and a group called the Prolifics. They were good guys. They'd all just got out of prison. They're the ones that named me, go get us, Bo. Because then whenever we needed food, we pulled in a place, I went in. about 20, 35. It's good to have a white guy in band. Go get it, Spo. Jackie's musical director, Truman Thomas, phoned me up and he says, I'm going to form a big band in LA. We're going to do soul shows at the Palladium, Hollywood Palladium. So I drove out there to California, to Los Angeles. Lived in a hotel and we had this 18-piece soul band. It was a great band. And we backed Tyrone Davis, Barbara McAcklin, Little Dion, the Chi Lights. And then Jackie was one of the artists. And he didn't know. He knew it was Truman's band. He didn't know I was there. But he came out on stage doing this, throwing his coat over his shoulder and the drum kicks, And he saw me and he went like this. He said, Lone Ranger. Like they came over and gave me a hug. That was nice. I worked with T-Bone Walker for 2 years. That was significant to me. We did college concerts in California. I worked with an old group called the Shirelles from the 50s. I worked with Lou Rawls, the Pointer Sisters. I subbed with Ray Charles' band. I did 3 gigs with Ray. I'd been in the folk scenes for a minute, playing with Hamilton Camp, opposite Tom Waits, Cheech and Chong, Jackson Browne. These guys weren't even known in those days. And the show got picked up to go to Broadway. So that sort of ended my LA contacts because I left and I had a baby on the way. And so it was great to go to Broadway. We did 2 shows on Broadway. We did Paul Sills Story Theater, which was Grimm's and Aesop Tales, acted out with no sets, just mime, colors. Actors spoke in the first and third person. It was a big hit. And then we did a second show concurrently of Ovid's Metamorphosis, Arnold Weinstein's adaptation of it, which is the story of Juno and Jove and Pygmalion and, all the gods and all that. So I did the music for that. I actually won Tony for the music. But I was there for a couple of years. My baby was born. I was making big dough, it was great, man. We played on stage for every show. We had a band on stage. And it was really fun by the time second show because I'd written all of that music. One of the actresses in the show, man, was Valerie Harper. She's a real good friend, terrific friend. And she said, Loren, she said, me and Dick Shaw, her husband, are breaking up. We own an apartment on the west side, penthouse. You want to come see it? Because I know you've saved some money. She took me up there. It's a penthouse apartment. I said, how much, Val? She said, $80,000. And, if you give me $4,000 or something in front, it's yours. God, do you know what that would be worth today? And I, truly in the folly, idiocy of my decisions, said, no, I'm going to buy into this commune in Virginia, which I did. The interesting commune, the Arquettes were there, the actor Arquettes. All those kids, Patricia and all them were little kids. And on this commune, we built these geodesic domes that blew over in the first storm, and didn't buy that New York apartment, which was really stupid, man. Valerie hired me on her show in Los Angeles to do the music. She was under Mary's umbrella, so I sometimes worked the Mary Tyler Moore show, the Rhoda show. I worked the Bob Newhart show, Paul Sand show, and a show called Doc. Those were all out at Universal Studios. And we played while they were changing sets, and I played on a couple of recording sessions and stuff. But Valerie's a good friend. I played the blues for years. Playing with T-Bone, I played a big blues festival in 1989 at Long Beach College with Albert Collins, Albert King, Otis Rush, Etta James, Roy Gaines, and the four horn players were Me, Ricky Woodard with Ray Charles Band, Buster Cooper with Ellington, Oscar Bashir's been with everybody. And we just played behind every act, made up lines, and, played that the intro to At Last. And I knew Etta from years before because we'd gone to the club, and Etta liked a little taste. And I had said, hey, Etta, here, and give her a little matchstick, a smack. I went to Denver with Chet, in a club out in Denver, and we did that club. I don't know how many gigs it was, maybe 17, 18 gigs. And it was a beautiful man. He was the most focused musician I ever played with. He had ability to put everything, every bit of focus. In fact, he said one time to me, he says, the difference between us, man, you're a give a shit musician, and I don't give a shit. He says, you care what Leonard Feather, the famous jazz critic, thinks. You worry whether I like you, whether the famous drummer likes you, Harold. You worry what, you think about how can you impress the chick in the first table row. He says, see, I don't care about any of that, but think of all the attention that leaves me to put on the music. That was very valuable, man. I was getting like to study painting with Picasso or Franz Klein. And if Chet Baker just hadn't been such a dope, he said no. So without the dope, there'd be no Chet Baker. That's my deal with life is I get to take all the dope, you get to listen to me. Which I dug. I was so glad he wasn't an apologist about it. Yeah, I was a junkie when I was a kid. When I first got out of CYA, I went to San Francisco and lived in North Beach in the hotels and got strung out, got busted. And in those days, you could either take your bust or you could go to Synon. So I went to Synon. I was a Synon facility in Salinas I went to. And have to go through Synon, you never take drugs again because you don't want to have to do that again. That's So I only had one further incident with drugs in the 90s. A girlfriend left and I knew the connection, and so I got strung out again. But that time I said, wait a minute, man, your kids don't want you to be junkie. So I had a gig over in Monterey, so I just went over and kicked by myself in a hotel room. But yeah, in those days, everybody took heroin, and heroin was a drug of choice of jazz musicians. It was part of the culture. And almost anybody you can mention back from those schools was into heroin. Cocaine really hadn't showed up yet, except for speedballs. So, I felt bad. Like, once when I was strung out, I lived in a hotel in North Beach, and I stole a lady's TV, old lady, pensioner. And so I felt so bad, man, that I went out and bought her another TV and left it by her door. You know what I mean? I just wasn't comfortable with that. And I made this album called Song for a Blue Planet. Real good reviews in Downbeat. And then the company released the second album on it. That one got nominated for a Jazz Grammy in 1990. And they had the most famous, most recorded jazz drummer in history, Billy Higgins on drums, George Cable's on bass, John Hurt on drums, and got 5 stars in Downbeat. It was really going. Columbia Records got real interested in it, and they flew me to New York. I'm up on the 64th story of the Columbia Records building and with George Butler, who signed Harry Connick, Wynton Marsalis. And he said, I really like that record, Loren. He says, I want to sign you in November. So I go home from New York. We went and saw Around Midnight together. I said, I'm going to be famous like Wynton Marsalis, which meant I could work and support my family and travel. I was like, he even put out a magazine article, said, this year I'm signing three guys I consider masters of the idioms, but they're expanding idioms. It was me, Charles Moffat, a bass player, and Benny Green, a pianist. And I showed my wife, I said, look, it's in the paper. George is going to sign me. So he was supposed to meet with me in LA in November. We did, and he said, look, man, Sony just bought Columbia. And basically what happened is they had a meeting because I was presenting your record as the one I wanted to put out on Columbia. I'd recorded it already. And they said, look, we want to sign this guy, Tim Burton. He's a fashion model, done some modeling on Laurie's side. He's young, he's a kick-ass looking guy. Loren's kind of like approaching middle age, and he's a little bit overweight, and he's white. And George would say, no, yeah, but Loren can talk, man. Has a lot to say. It didn't matter. They signed him. But that was that was a disappointment because I felt like it was almost there. And after that, I said, okay, well, what are you going to do? Oh, same thing, play, practice, do music. But that was kind of the end of my big ambitions. And eventually I got a job at the Gazebo, which is out, across from the French Market. And it was every day, 6 days a week. And we were making ridiculous bread. So I started working steady with John, just me and John, at Storyville. So I was working there 4, 5, 6 nights a week. I was working at the Gazebo. And I started looking at my money. I said, Jesus, man, I'm making like $900 a week, $1,000 a week, and I was packing it under my mattress, I was in heaven, man. I had a rooftop apartment with antique French furniture, $300 a month. And while I was up there, the office that rented those apartments was downstairs, and Sheila worked there in those offices. So I was paying her my rent. That's how I met Sheila. And Sheila and I fell in. She said she wanted to live in Tennessee Williams' apartment that he wrote Streetcar in Summer and Smoke in. I said, sure, $600 a month, up some stairs from the street, kitchen, bedrooms, big, long French room with a fireplace at each end, his grand piano, the Orline gave. We moved in there together. So we actually lived up there until the ceiling fell in. Sheila and I have been together 22 years. And it's the nicest relationship, man. Once I met Sheila, I kind of knew that was it for me. Well, first of all, we all evacuate hurricanes in the summers. But Sheila ran into the hurricane guy in the halls. And he said, this is serious. This has come this way and it's big. So she came home and told me, I said, it's just a little bit of wind and rain. But she convinced me we should go. On TV, the flood had begun. The levees had broken. So one of the shots was of my neighborhood. I said, holy mackerel. I guess we don't have a home to live in anymore. So we went to Kansas City. Didn't really mean to go to Kansas City. I was going to turn left and go across the country to California, where my people were. But my axle broke. Both axles broke. Boy, it was a disaster. The car fell apart. So we had to go to the shelter. The FEMA shelters then get her $2,000 and spend it all on the car. $1,900 fixing the car. So I said, I guess we're here. And then the American Jazz Federation was helping us out. We were going out to old folks' homes and schools and doing music and getting paid well for it. We took a band to Europe, Kansas City All-Star Band. We played Jay McShann, Charlie Parker, who was the other great band leader. But I finally came down to the point I had no work, not a gig, 6 months. I was applying for gigs like sitting in the rental car station little cubby hole at night in the freezing weather, being a guard. And January 11th, it was cold and freezing. It was like 10 degrees. I said to Sheila, I gotta go home. And when I came back, I said, I don't care if it's a fucking tsunami and 1 square foot of ground to stand, I'm never leaving. This is where my home is. And I'm gonna stay here until a tsunami washes me away. When I came back from Kansas City, first night, I walked into DBA. And John said on the mic, he said, one of the elders of New Orleans music is here. And I want you to give him a big round of applause. I guess a big standing ovation. I said, I think I'm home. See, John had come back after the storm from Brazil. Frenchman Street was barren, nobody. And John just went into DBA, said, I want to sing. Got a chair, sat on stage, started to sing a cappella. A couple of weeks later, Todd came back from Chicago. When I came back, I was added to the band. Bass players, trombone players. So that's a wonderful gig and wonderful musicians and a great association. I love that gig. Even though it's been 5 years, I'm going to make this album with all of us from Dos Jefes. This is a tune called Prince of Hearts that I wrote for my oldest son, Michael, who passed away in 2013. And that might be the lead tune of the album. And it's also to commemorate the friendship between Eric and Wendell and I that you guys caught the other night. Me and Eric and Wendell are dynamite together. I want to play one of the best solos of my life and just have a big, huge fucking cardiac. Speaking, I always told Pete Harris, the bass player, that. I said, Peter, when I die, it's going to be of a cardiac, and I'm going to land right on your bass and bring it to the floor and crush it. I promise you I'm going to do that. So on gigs, sometimes I'll fake a heart attack. I'll go, and I like to watch Pete because he goes. It means a lot to me to be considered a New Orleans musician after 20 years of being here. To be thought of as one of the elders in New Orleans music.